To our final session of the lesson plan and teaching course. I'm really happy that you are joining. I see that some participants are still joining. So welcome to the final session. We've reached the final session. Hooray. So my name is Alina. I will be your trainer today. And as usual, we will make the recording of our today's meeting so that you can rewatch it later if you miss any parts. And as usual, as it is a webinar, I would really appreciate all your answers to my questions or your questions in the chat box. So please feel free to use the chat box to send your questions or to send your answers. So let's communicate this way. And today, we are going, so since it's the final session, today we're going to revise briefly everything that we have discussed with you since the beginning of the course. We will summarize everything, so we will sum up some key points and maybe I will give you some tips. Yes, I will give you some tips on how to plan successfully different types of the lesson that we have already discussed, such as systems lessons and receptive skills lesson. But at the same time, we will briefly discuss how what might be the possible staging of productive skills lessons, that is reading, that is writing and speaking. We haven't discussed that yet, so today we will look closely how to plan these types of the lesson. And of course, we will look at some other types of the lesson and why planning might be different for these types of the lessons. And finally, we will finish everything with assessment. We will look at assessment as a great tool that can help us in planning lessons. So we will discuss, I will tell you, yes, how assessment can help you in planning your lessons more effectively and more successfully. So let's start. And again, I see that some participants are still joining. So I suggest we start with a brief warm-up. Yes, while we are waiting for others. And let's talk about you teachers. Yes, so it would be really nice to share some of your experience, yes, some of your attitude to teaching. And I suggest we do the following. So think and answer. How often do you, as a teacher, do the following? So, for example, and give your answers to the chat. You can write always, sometimes, never, or our favorite answer, it depends. Yes, or you can just write the first letter. A for always, S for sometimes, and never for never, and N for never. If you want to choose it depends, welcome, you're welcome. So how often do you have to be flexible in class and step away from the prepared lesson plan? How often does it happen in your lessons? Give me your answers in the chat. Oh, I see. Sometimes. Okay, Irina, thank you. What about others? And others sometimes. Okay, that's great. That's great that we are flexible. Remember, we've discussed with you that, of course, we can plan everything, but there should always be some space for flexibility. Yes, we need to be responsive to our students' needs, and the best way to do that, that's be flexible. Yes, and sometimes step away from the pre-planned lesson plan. Okay, always. Wow, Irina, that's great. That's great that you can do that. Yeah, I believe it might be difficult for new teachers, to be flexible at any type of the lesson with any students. But if you're an experienced teacher and you can do that, you have enough confidence, it's great that you can do that. Okay, let's go next. How often do you clarify target language, either grammar or vocabulary, before practice stages? How often do you clarify grammar or vocabulary before you give some practice to your students? Okay, always. It's kind of tricky question. So I see others are thinking, yeah, I received some messages private, but anyway, yes, it's great if you always clarify it before practice. There is nothing wrong with that, but it means that basically maybe you stick mostly to PPP, presentation, practice, production. Yeah, I see first, it depends. Yes, it depends on the type of the framework that you choose. Yeah, if, for example, you choose PPP, something that we've discussed with you, yeah, presentation, practice, production. Of course, you will first present the language, clarify it, check understanding, and then you will give your students some opportunity to practice. But if you, for example, choose, remember we've talked about TTT, yeah, or TBL, task-based learning, probably you first give your students some practice task, and then you will clarify something that they need, yes, something that they don't understand. Okay, let's move next. Oh, a very great question. I really want to know, how often do you use timelines to explain verb tenses? Now, when we draw something like a line, we draw present, we draw past here, future here. How often do you use these timelines? Never. Oh, Irina, I'm also not a fan because I'm just afraid I'm not good at using timelines. And I'm always afraid of, using something not in the right way. Okay, but do we have anyone who uses timelines maybe at least sometimes or always? Oh, Irina, great. Always drawing something. That's great. If you can do that, it's a good way to convey the meaning of verb tenses in English, yeah? To show students on the timeline how these tenses relate to each other, yes? And it will help them to understand the concepts better. Very nice. Question number 4. How often do you use drilling for teens and adult learners? If you teach teenagers or if you teach adults, how often do you ask them to repeat something after you? With young learners, I think it's quite easy and nothing like, it's not weird, it's always comfortable, they enjoy repeating, they enjoy drilling. What about teenagers and adults? My teenage learners, yes, teens, they are sometimes not quite confident. Sometimes they don't feel comfortable when I ask them to repeat something after me. It depends. Okay, yes. Irina, you can leave your question. You can ask your question in the chat. But again, it depends, and actually we need to help learners to get used to drilling, because as we know, drilling is a good technique to help students practice pronunciation, yes, and even spot how this or that is pronounced. So actually drilling is important for any types of learners, either young learners or teenagers or adults. So even adults, if they are used to that, they'll do that, yes, and they won't be shy. Okay, next one, number 5. How often do you use communicative speaking tasks during production stages? I highlighted speaking here. How often do you use communicative speaking tasks for your production stages? Okay. It depends. Oh, Irina. Okay, great. Always, sometimes. Irina also says sometimes. That's great. If it's not a speaking task, what would it be for you? What type of task would you give? Okay, while you're typing, I just want to remind that speaking is, of course, the greatest task for the production stage, because students will have an opportunity to practice speaking by using some language, yes, something that they have just learned, because we know that speaking is probably one of the most important aspects in language, because language is a tool of communication, yes. So that's why we usually opt to use speaking, yeah, during the production stages, but remember that we can also use writing. So we can ask our students not to talk about something and answer questions by using some target language, yes, either grammar or vocabulary, but we can ask our students to write something, again, using the target language. So let's not forget about writing. Of course, not that often, but let's not forget about writing. We will talk about that today. Okay, number 6, regroup students at least 3 times per lesson. Do you remember to regroup your students? If you have such an opportunity, of course. As for me, regrouping is easier when you work online because it's quite busy. Students don't need to change their states. Yes, you just click the button on Zoom and everything is ready. Just not to forget. Forced. Oh, I see. I'm forced to do that. Okay. Never. Okay. But remember, we need to regroup. Yes. So the students have an opportunity to talk to different people during the lesson. Yeah. I put at least 3 times. Let's say at least 2 times. Yeah. At least 2 times. Okay. Do you use jigsaw, reading or listening? How often? Jigsaw. When students read their part of the text and then they share. Yeah? So if you have 3 paragraphs, you ask student A to read paragraph 1, student B reads paragraph 2, and student C reads paragraph C, and then they share. Oh, sometimes, great. It's a great opportunity. It's a great activity. We will also look at this today. How often do you pre-teach blocking vocabulary? Always. Great. Yeah, always. Perfect. Thank you, Victoria, Irina, Anna. That's great. Okay, question number 9, a little bit tricky, but anyway, how often do you focus on grammar accuracy in receptive skills lessons? That is either reading or listening. How often do you focus on grammar accuracy in such lessons? That you correct some grammar mistakes or mispronunciations, maybe. It depends. Sometimes. Great. Yeah, we don't always do that. Completely agree with you, with your answers. We don't always do that because that's not the main aim of such lessons. Yes, but we might do that. Yes, it depends. Question number 10. How often do you repeat the same tasks and or activities with the same students in the same class? So let's imagine you have final task like a role play. Would you repeat it again under some circumstances or not? And how often do you do that? It depends. Okay, Irina, I see your answer. It depends. Oh, wow, Irina, I see that you always do that. Yeah, it's a wonderful technique. Yeah, we sometimes do that. Yeah, and there are some benefits, yes, behind this, behind repeating the same task again. And we will discuss that today, yes, and how to include it, how to plan that and how to include that in our lesson plans. Okay, we have 2 questions, and I see that almost all participants are here. So number 11, how often do you use peer or self-assessment in writing lessons? Always for younger. Yes, I see your Victoria. Yeah, for younger learners, 100%. It's a good decision. So number 11, use peer or self-assessment in writing lessons. Then when you ask your students to check their own writing, or you ask their classmates, their peers to check. Yeah, so you don't check that on your own, but you first give them opportunity to either self-check or peer check. It depends, Irina. Probably it depends on the level and the age. Sometimes, Victoria, I see. Sometimes. Yeah. We sometimes need to do that, yes? And we will discuss why we need to do that, at least sometimes. And final, how often do you conduct assessments for teaching purposes? You know, when you assess your students' progress, your students' performance, not because of giving marks to them or giving feedback to their parents, but for your own purposes, teaching purposes. How often do you do that? If you don't have even a planned test, but you decide, I need to test my students, it depends, okay? Sometimes. So at least sometimes we do that, yeah? I see your answers. So today we will discuss, yes, assessment. Yes, sometimes. We will talk about informal assessment and how it can help us to plan our lessons. But before that, as I promised, let's briefly sum up everything that we've discussed with you about systems lessons. I guess it was 2 weeks ago, and about receptive lessons. That's something that you discussed with Olga last week, So when we talk about systems, and basically when we talk about teaching, let's recollect that, So when we talk about teaching, we basically need to teach our students some systems. So our students need to know something in order to use language, and they need to be able to do something with that language. So they need to develop their receptive skills, listening and reading, and they need to develop their productive skills, that is speaking and writing, in order to be able to use the language. So they need some knowledge, and they need to develop some skills. And because of that, because of the fact that we teach these, let's say, 7 aspects of language, we can differentiate different types of the lessons. And for each type of the lesson, we have a common framework that we can follow, a common set of stages that we can use for planning lessons, And when we talk about systems lessons, we talk about frameworks and stages that we usually include into our lesson plans for grammar, vocabulary, or functional language lessons. So what is important here? We've discussed that, but when you teach system lessons, the key point here is to, when you look through the materials, to set the aim, and to set a manageable aim. Yes, the aim should be specific, but more importantly here, that your aim should be manageable for your students. For example, if your course book suggests, if your course book offers, a set of modal verbs for one lesson, and you see that your students would not manage with that variety of modal verbs, maybe you need to adapt and adjust and plan a lesson in a different way. Whenever you check the materials, whenever you know what you need to teach, of course, it's time to choose the framework that you would like to follow. And very often course books, actually the order of activities in your course books usually gives you the direction of what framework to use. For example, modern course books, they usually include text-based presentation, with some guided discovery tasks. So it's quite common for modern course books. But if you see that it's not okay for your students and you want to plan the lesson in a different way, so feel free to change the order of activities or change the activities that the course book suggests, and choose a different framework. So we will not discuss that because we already discussed that. But remember that the most common frameworks for teaching grammar, vocabulary, or functional language are PPP, presentation, practice, production, text-based presentation with guided discovery, and TTT. Again, usually modern course books suggest they give you something like text-based presentation with some guided discovery. So that is a good approach. But if you see that your students would not cope with that, you can opt to use the PPP. So you would not ask your students, to figure out the rules on their own, or maybe you don't have enough time for reading the whole text. So you can use the PPP and plan your lesson in a different way. So what's important to consider here? For example, if we talk about PPP, that's usually framework that we use for beginners, Of course, we can use it with any levels, but especially when we talk about beginners and you open a book and you see something like a huge text with a guided discovery and you think, oh, my students they don't have enough knowledge to cope with that, So you can change and use a PPP. So you can present the language, you can do it more in a teacher-centered way, and you can present and you can help your students, with the rules, and then follow the framework of PPP, practice and production. If we talk about TTT, also make sure that if you see that there is a huge list of flaxes, and you see that you don't have much time and you're working with intermediate level students and you want to do it faster, because maybe you have something else to work on during the lesson, so you can change the activities. You can skip clarification of something that they have already learned before and something that they feel confident with. So you can plan your lesson in a TTT way, using a TTT framework, test what they know, clarify only some parts of this lexicon, only one part of this lexicon, a few terms, and then move to something different, something more important. So the key point here is that whatever framework you choose, yes, make sure that you clarify the language that your students don't feel confident about, yes, that your students need. So clarify the meaning, form, and pronunciation. Make sure that your students know it. Yeah, whenever you teach grammar, vocabulary, or functional language, whatever framework you choose, you always do this clarification. So you clarify what your students don't know about this language. And of course, include some practice so that students have a chance to use that language. Again, either in speaking, yeah, it's the best way, or in writing. It's up to you. So the point is here that they need to test, to try using this language in their own sentences. One more point here is to bring variety to your class. Of course, you can work according to the course book or to the materials that your school gives to you. But if you always use PPP, yeah, presentation, practice, production, for teaching grammar or vocabulary, that might get boring for your students, yes. Probably it's time to bring some variety to class. So you can change. You can choose either, I don't know, TTT, or think about something like TBL, yes, task-based approach. So plan your lesson and focus your lesson around one task, a speaking task. And out of that, you can like take the language that your students know, yeah. So give them some practice at once, give them a chance to use some language, yes, to talk about some topic, and then out from there, take some language and clarify it. So change the order of activities in your course book. You always have a productive task, you always have like a speaking task, I'm sure, in your course book. So give your students a chance to complete the task and then see what they struggle with and then do the clarification. So do it in a different way, and again, it will bring variety to your class. Or if you feel confident enough, maybe you could try and use some elements of dogme, of materials light approach. Then when you give your students a chance to decide what they want to do in class, what they want to discuss in class. I don't say that you should always do that, but at least from time to time, yes? So you can devote 20 minutes and you can let your students decide what they want to discuss. And when they discuss the topic they are interested in, you can give them the language that they need or the language that they struggle with, yes? Try to use different approaches, again, to make your lessons more engaging and to have this variety. It's very important in learning to keep students motivated and interested. So what we need to consider. So here I've created a short checklist, lesson plan checklist for systems lessons. So whenever you teach systems, yes, and whenever you're ready with your lesson plan, make sure that you have all this criteria, yes, that your lesson plan corresponds to these criteria. So first, we have already discussed, make sure that your aims are specific, they are achievable, manageable for your learners, there is not too much for one lesson, yeah, and make sure that the activities, remember, the activities should align with the lesson plan. I will show you this picture again. So whenever you plan a lesson, whenever you plan an activity, make sure that this activity aligns with the lesson aim, yeah? So ask yourself, why am I doing this? Will this help my students to achieve the main aim of the lesson? Then learn how to prioritize. If you say that you have only 60 minutes, but the book, yes, the book that you are using or the materials that you are using gives too many tasks for 60 minutes, probably you will need to prioritize, yes? You will need to plan which tasks might be skipped, but which tasks should be should be done like for 100%. So learn how to prioritize, and it's better to do that while planning a lesson and not deciding that on the spot when you're already in class. So you have 10 minutes and you need to prioritize what to do. Yeah, better to plan that and learn how to do that. It might be difficult at once. But again, think about the aim of the lesson, think about your learners, and give them something that they really need. Of course, check production. So whenever you start planning lessons, check the production task. What students will have to be able to do by the end of the lesson and what you will need to do in order to help them be able to do that, yes? So check the production. And then you see, for example, by the end of the lesson, they should be able to talk about rules of something. Yeah, so probably I will need to teach some modal verbs. I will need to teach some, maybe some places, maybe some other language, yes, some other lexes. So make sure that everything that you do before production, yes, gives students like enough input in order to be able to to complete that production task. And of course, be flexible. Then when everything is done, you have the lesson plan. Make sure that the lesson is logically staged. Yes, we've discussed with you. I will show you a picture again, but if you like follow PPP, make sure that clarification goes before practice, and semi-controlled practice, more difficult task, goes after some controlled tasks. So first you give them some easy tasks to, to check, to train a little bit, and then you give them more difficult tasks when they will have to create their own sentences or talk about themselves. So make sure that it is logical stage. Usually if you follow again the activities in your course books, of course, it will give you the correct logical order. But if you don't, if you want to design your lesson from scratch, yes, make sure that you do that in a logical order. Make sure that your lesson includes an engaging lead-in. Yeah, remember engage, study, activate, the concept suggested by Jeremy Hammer. So everything starts with engaging our learners. Whatever we do, whatever framework we choose, whatever we teach, we need to make students interested in the topic, to make them curious about the topic. So if they are motivated, if they're engaged, it will be easier for you to work in class. Yes. So if you have this engaging lead-in, it's half of your success. Yes, it's key to your success. Also, the clarification stage should be sufficiently planned. We often rely on our own knowledge, yes, and we think that we can explain any grammar rule, we can explain any, I don't know, any vocabulary item, but sometimes it's not that easy, especially if you teach, but even if you teach beginners, yes, you need to plan how you will explain this and that to your students, how you will check their understanding, yes. Remember that we need to be 100% sure how we will explain the meaning of the word, yes, or the grammar structure, how we will check whether they understand. So we need to be ready, we need to prepare, plan the CCQs, concept checking questions that we need to ask them in order to check whether they understand. We need to think what is important in terms of form, yeah? So what forms of this grammar structure my students need to know in order to be able to use the structure? Do they need to know negative form at this point? Do they need to know questions, only general questions, or or only general questions? Maybe they need to know short answers or whatever, yes? So think what's important in terms of form, and of course it should be planned. You should include that in your plan. And of course think about pronunciation. Is there anything that you would like to draw your students' attention to in terms of pronunciation? If you teach vocabulary, make sure that you know what words you would drill with your students. If you teach grammar structures or functional language, think what might be difficult for your learners and maybe what you will have to drill with your learners. Think, for example, if you need to teach separate words or you need to drill the whole phrase for intonation or, I don't know, sentence stress. So plan that and include that into your lesson plan. It's a very important stage, and again, it seems very easy, but it should be planned in order to be successful. And one important tip here, that's when you work on pronunciation of vocabulary or grammar structures or functional language exponents, these useful phrases, yeah. So one important tip here is that when you work on pronunciation, make sure that first you model the pronunciation to your learners. So you show them how to pronounce this word. Yeah, so you let them listen to the word, to the grammar structure, to the phrase. Then make sure that you use a board or whatever. You highlight what exactly you want to drill in this word. For example, you want to drill some separate vowel, or you want to drill the connected speech aspects between words, or you want to drill intonation, so probably you would need to draw an arrow up or whatever. So highlight what you want to drill with your students and then ask them to repeat after you. Yeah, ask them first to repeat all together if you work in groups, and then ask them to repeat individually. So you can nominate a few students and ask them to repeat this or that word. So that's something that we usually skip because, again, I asked you before, teenagers don't feel very comfortable when you ask them to repeat. Adult learners also don't feel very comfortable when you ask them to repeat. But when you highlight, when you show them, look, these words are connected, yes, we can link them and it would sound more natural, yeah? It would be more natural English. And then you ask them to drill chorally, so they repeat all together, so they gain some confidence. And only after that you ask like separate students to repeat. So maybe in this way it will help you to, you know, to incorporate drilling into your lessons with teenagers or adult learners. So just think about that. And of course, whenever you check your lesson plan, make sure that you have enough practice tasks and you have a productive activity. So something that I wanted to show you here. Yes, I wanted to show you this scheme. Yeah, presentation, practice, production. That is if you follow PPP, presentation, practice, production. Yes, remember, if we use TTT, we do first practice, then presentation, then production. If we work according to TBL, task-based learning, we might start with the production, then move to presentation and practice. But the most common is PPP, that's why I have this scheme. So look at the questions at my screen, yeah, and try to answer them for yourself, or feel free to share in the chat. I'll be happy to see your answers. Does presentation and clarification always go first? I've asked you. Okay, I've already answered this question, yeah? But anyway, let me answer it again. It depends on the framework that you choose. It shouldn't be a rule for you that I first clarify the language and then I give my students practice. No, again, try to vary it. Use various approaches. Give your students practice. See how well they can do something and then clarify. Or start with a productive task. Ask them to communicate about something, to talk about something, and then clarify that they need something that they need or something that they struggle with. So try to do it in a different way. Yes, clarification, presentation should not always go first. So the next question, when students are ready for the production. So I don't know, but new teachers think that production is like a must. Yeah, so we always should give a production task for our students when we teach vocabulary or grammar. So we should give our students a chance to speak or to write using the target language. Again, it should not be a rule. There is a tiny exception to this rule. Yeah, if you see that your students are not ready for the production, they make too many mistakes. So maybe it's time for you again to change your direction, to change your lesson plan and give them more controlled practice to gain better accuracy. Yes, and production will be next lesson or in a lesson or whenever you have time. Yeah, so make sure that your students are ready for the production. If they're not ready, yeah, especially elementary or beginners, they need to do more controlled tasks. Again, your course books, I'm sure they give you like enough controlled tasks, or you can find a lot of them on the internet. Yeah, so make sure you give them a chance to first gain some confidence and accuracy, yes, and then give the production. And something that question number 5, the final question. Yes, remember that writing might also be used as a productive activity, yes, for the production stage. So it's again to give your students to write something using the target language. It's also a productive skill. You might ask them to write a story. You might ask them to write a short message or whatever, yeah, by using the target language. So it's also a good activity for the production stage. Let's not forget about writing. You know, I'll give you one recommendation, a piece of advice, yes. Actually, that's something that I learned from another trainer, tutor. So she told me that we should not get stuck at the clarification stage. I remember I was teaching elementary students and I wanted them, you know, to understand what I was teaching. I wanted them to understand it to 100%. And only after that, I wanted to give them the practice. Yeah, but I spent so much time explaining and asking questions, drawing, whatever on the board, and it was useless. So whenever you see that students don't understand, yes, so you're getting stuck at the clarification stage. Let your students try. Maybe when they practice, you will see their real problems, yes? So, and maybe it's okay, it's completely okay. We can come back to the clarification stage. We will probably never plan that in our lesson plan. Yes, probably we don't include it into our lesson plan. But remember that you can always come back to the clarification stage again and clarify something again. Yes, so you can come back to clarification after controlled practice. You can come back to the clarification after another controlled practice. So you will do that, and students need a chance to try. Maybe when they do something, they will understand it better, not by just answering your questions or CCQs. So the best advice here is don't get stuck at the clarification stage. If you see it takes you too much time, it's time to move forward. Okay, so I guess if you have any other questions about systems lessons, yeah, let me know, or give your question in the chat, or leave your question till the end of our session. We will discuss it. Yes, the key point here that I wanted to say is to bring variety to class. We have very good common frameworks for systems. We can plan PPP, task-based presentation all the time, but we need to be flexible, and we need to bring some variety to class to make our classes, to keep our students more motivated. So don't forget to vary that. Receptive skills lessons. Again, we will not talk about staging. I believe you remember the staging, the structures of either listening or reading lesson. Yeah, so these are the stages. Yeah, you can look through them. So what's important for listening or reading lessons? Of course, that's the text. As of course, you have text in your course books. I think Olga last week Olga told you a lot about choosing the text. Yes, that we need to make sure that the text is interesting to our students, that it's relevant to the age and to the level of our students. Yes, so because if they're not interested in the topic of the text, probably, and your your lesson is based on this topic, probably that would you can fail, to be honest. Yeah, so my point is here that sometimes it's a good idea to use authentic text in your lessons. Authentic, that's real texts from real websites, English speaking, magazines, books, or whatever. Yes, so bring some authentic input into your lesson, some authentic materials into your lessons. And of course, if you're using authentic text, yes, give me any reactions if you do that. And how often, I didn't put this question on the first slide, how often do you use authentic materials with your students? Always, sometimes, never? Because all the text probably that we have in course books are not authentic, they are graded. They were created for learning purposes, yes? Authentic texts were not created for learning purposes. Okay, I see some answer. Sometimes, Irina, that's great. Sometimes, oh, I see that sometimes we use it, yeah. So whenever you choose authentic text, you want your students to work with authentic, I don't know, video or film or an article, yes, probably you will have to design a lesson on your own, yes, and to think about stages and activities on your own. So what's important then? So make sure that you decide on what sub-skill, yeah, you would like to focus on in your lesson. There will be probably a gist, yes, so look at the type of the text that you have. If you have an article, probably students would, in real life, they would read an article in order to grasp the main idea of the article. Probably if they read something like an academic article, they would like to spot some details, names, figures, or whatever that is written for specific information, scanning, yeah? So think for what purposes, yes, in what way this authentic text might be used in real life. And then based on that, you can decide on what types of activities you want to include into your lesson. So whenever you have that, then think what productive follow-up task you can give to your students. So what will they do in order to give their personal response to the text? Yeah, that's actually what we do in real life. We read something and then we either retell it to someone else or we discuss the book with our friends. Yes, so think what might be a good task, a real life task for students to do after reading or after listening this or that video, especially when we watch a movie. Yes, why do we watch movies? Maybe like to enjoy that, but very often when we watch a movie, we then discuss it with our friends, with our family. Yes, we tell about, I don't know, special effects, or we talk about actors, or we talk about the plot, yeah, or about our impressions. So think what follow-up task you would give to your students, what to consider while planning such type of the lesson. It might be difficult, yes, of course, these tips would be relevant to any type of the lesson, but I decided to put them here. So it might be difficult to decide how much time students would need to read the text, yes, or it might be difficult to decide whether your students would need to listen to the text twice or 3 times, yes, or you would need to, I don't know, to listen to some parts a few times, like more times that you can plan. Yeah, so it might be difficult in terms of timing. So in such types of the lessons, receptive skills lesson, it's a good idea to include some flexi stages. So stages that you could either skip or add if it's necessary. Yeah, if you see that students go well with the text, they are very fast completing, yeah, they're very fast and they complete all the tasks very fast, so you can add something. But again, it should be done while you're planning this lesson. Then, of course, you're working with the same text, yeah, for some time, so it's a good idea to bring variety. I will talk about variety a lot today. So how we can bring variety to our lessons? Again, it may refer to any type of the lesson. Think about interaction patterns. So ask students to work individually, then to compare their answers in pairs. Make sure you regroup them. So let them work in groups for, I don't know, for the productive task, yeah? So we might have individual, pair, small group, large group, or whole class, yeah? So you can even, when you plan a lesson, you can highlight, here I have pair work, and then again I have pair work. So if I have another pair work, so probably I would need to regroup them. Yeah, so make sure that you have like different interaction patterns. Then we can bring variety in terms of tasks and activities. I know that we all love true-false activities. Yes, it's a good activity, true-false, because it helps our students to learn how to read like finding as many details as possible. But if you do true or false activity every lesson, it might not be interesting for your students. Yes, so make sure that you have a variety of activities, a variety of tasks. Also think about pace and the intensity of activities. Make sure that some tasks are easy, they are short. Then you have some more complex questions like long reading. And then after that, probably you would have something more relaxing as talking. So make sure that you change this intensity of activity, especially for young learners. Yes, so you don't only change like the types of tasks, but you change the intensity of these activities. Yes, hard, something difficult, then something easy. Then again, we can do something more difficult like reading or writing. Yeah, so make sure that you give different activities to your young learners. Then think about resources. They might be oral, written, visual, especially even if you work with a text. Yes, you might add pictures to have a lead in. You might add I don't know, some oral yeah, you can bring some, I don't know, you can ask them to discuss what they've read and give them an example of a person who speak about that text. Yeah, so it will be an oral resource. Yes, it will be like a recording or whatever. And of course, vary the types of feedback. Yeah, how you get feedback from your learners. You can give them the answers. You can show the answers on the board. You can ask them to check in pairs or in groups. You can ask random questions. You can use fun ways of checking. Yes, fun ways, I don't know, of checking true or false activities, for example, using TPR or reactions if you're working on Zoom. Write how you get the feedback from your students, how you check the answers. Again, it will make your lessons more engaging, yeah, and more interesting for your learners. Of course, think about leading and orientation to the text. Actually, that's something that we tend to skip. So we usually give a lead-in to set the context, to activate students' schemata about the topic, yeah, so what they already know about the topic, and then we ask them to read the text. So before you ask them to read the text, introduce this text to your learners. Say something like, guys, now you're going to listen to the dialogue between two friends and show these friends. This is Jane and this is Patrick. Yes, you will be listening to the dialogue between them. Or, for example, you want them to read the text. So, guys, now you will read an article from, I don't know, from a magazine about something, and there are 4 paragraphs. Yes, so when you introduce the text, especially the type of the text, to your learners, yes, it will prepare them better. They will know what to expect. Yeah, so make sure that you don't skip this tiny stage in your planning and in your lesson. Of course, think about blocking vocabulary and interaction. Yeah, I skipped here interaction because we would not stop here. You've discussed that, I guess. But jigsaw reading. Remember that you can use it for listening as well. If you have enough resources, if you know how to, manage that in your lesson, try jigsaw listening. So we know jigsaw reading, that's when we ask our students to read different parts of the text and then you group them and they share what they've read. It's great, but try to do the same with the listening. Yes, send them, especially if you're working online. Nowadays, it's easier. Yeah, of course, if you're working at the office, it might be difficult, but still it's possible. But now we're working online. Divide your students into different breakout sessions, give them different parts of a listening task, yeah, of like, I don't know, of a text. So they would listen to different texts or to different parts of the same recording, and then you will regroup them and ask them to share what they've listened to. So make sure that, you change it, yes, and you use different ways of interaction. Just to try. Jigsaw listening is not that difficult, and it's also a great activity. Blocking vocabulary. We've discussed a lot, and I think last week you discussed blocking vocabulary with Olga. Yeah, and I decided to check how well we understand what blocking vocabulary is. So let's do this quick task. Yeah. So blocking vocabulary, we know that that's vocabulary that we teach before we give our students a text. Yes, that's a vocabulary that prevents our students from understanding something, from completing the task. So these are some words that they need to be familiar with, that they need to know in order to complete some comprehension tasks. Yeah? So I would give you a minute, I guess. This is a very short extract, a very short part, yeah, a paragraph from the text. Yeah, it's not even a paragraph, it's just a few sentences. And this is the task that students level B2 have to complete. Yeah, so they need to find out whether this sentence is true or false from this part. Try to think what word might be blocking. Word, a collocation, a phrase might be blocking. What would you pre-teach? I'll give you a minute, I guess. It's not a single word. It's a phrase. So what would you pre-teach for B2 learners? So they need to answer whether the sentence is true or false. The author was hesitant to try going minimalist due to her habit of going shopping. So what might be blocking in this text? Oh yeah, I see, Irina. You're completely correct. Retail therapy. That's right. You're completely correct. Let me show you the answer. Yes. So probably you need to make sure that they truly understand what this phrase means, yes, in order to be able to complete this task. Yeah, you don't need to pre-teach them anything here, like minimalistic or lifestyle or whatever, because even if they don't know, they would be able to understand this or that from the context. But if they don't know this, yeah, retail therapy, probably it will be difficult for them to understand this word from the context, because if we put them separately, they have like one meaning. If we put them together, they have completely, not completely, but different meaning. Yeah, so probably you would need to pre-teach that. Okay, so a question here. So do we pay attention to the pronunciation of blocking vocabulary? Of course, we explain the meaning. We work with the meaning. What about pronunciation of blocking vocabulary? Yes or no? Yes, 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 especially if you pre-teach blocking vocabulary for a reading task, probably students don't need that much, yes, because they will just read and they will need to understand the meaning. But if you give them a listening task and they are not familiar with some words, probably they need to know how this or that word is pronounced in order to be able to hear it while listening to a recording, yes? So whenever you work with the blocking vocabulary for a listening task, make sure that you give your students the pronunciation of this word. Otherwise, they would not be able to grasp it, yes, to hear that from the recording. Listen, like the pronunciation here is very important for the listening lessons. Yeah. Of course, before reading the text, we should give our students opportunity to look through the questions they have to answer. Again, first of all, in order to be prepared for the task, for the reading, and again, maybe sometimes there might be some unfamiliar words in the task. Yeah, so probably you would ask your students, guys, look through the questions. Are all words clear? Yes, can we do the task? And then you can allow them to do the task. Yeah, I usually do it that way. I usually give them a chance to look through the questions. I always ask if everything is clear, if they can know how to like, if they understand the question. And of course, blocking vocabulary is not only about listening or reading. Yes, if you're doing, I don't know, if you're planning a grammar lesson and you see that some words in the tasks might not be familiar to your students, yes, so students might struggle with them. Of course, it's not the aim, it's not the focus of your lesson, but just to make sure that the students truly understand the context, yes, in which they need to insert, I don't know, a grammar structure or a word, just to make sure they understand the context, yeah, they understand the meaning of the sentence. You can pre-teach if it's necessary in grammar, in vocabulary lessons, whenever it's necessary. Yeah, even if you have a tricky word in the instructions, it's okay to pre-teach that. Yeah, don't stop that much, but just make sure that your students understand the meaning. And of course, finally, something that should be planned for such types of lessons, and we do skip that very often. I always sometimes skip that. Make sure that you check answers, and more importantly, you ask for justifications. Asking for justifications, what I mean here, that when, for example, you do true or false, yes, our favorite activity, that's when you do a true or false and you check the answers, you always need to ask your students why that is true and why that is false, where in the text you can find it, yes, so to check their comprehension, because they might guess, they might not think, but you know, this underlining something in the text and then give reasons why this or that is true or false, like helps them develop their reading or listening skills better. Yeah, the same with the listening. While if you give them a task, I don't know, to listen for some specific details, or you give them intensive listening when they need to, again, decide true or false, ask them to take note, yes, to justify their answers. If they are doing reading tasks, ask them, remind them that they need to underline the sentences in the text where they can find the answer to this or that question. Yeah, it's a very good skill for them, for their future in real life. Probably if they want to memorize something from the text they read, probably they would need to underline or to highlight something. Or if they listen for some information, item somewhere in real life, for example, for an announcement or a lecture at the university, usually they take notes. So it's something that's very important for their real life. Okay, so as everything, I suppose everything is clear here. Let's have a short test, yeah, and move to the productive lessons. We haven't discussed that yet at our course. So today we will discuss a little bit how to plan writing and speaking lessons. There is no common framework for planning. Yeah, if we talk about systems, receptive, everything is clear. We have a very structured order of activities, order of stages. We have some universally accepted, let me say so, yeah, universally accepted frameworks that we can follow. If we talk about writing and speaking, there is no such a framework that we always follow in planning such types of the lesson. But we do teach writing lessons and we do teach speaking lessons, yes? So before we discuss the possible stages, I would like you to complete this very short and easy test. So these are the possible, again, the possible stages of a speaking class. Yeah? Try to put them in order. Just give me your answer, the letters in the correct order in the chat box. Let me check if I have put everything here. Yeah, everything is here. So how would you stage, how would you plan your speaking lesson? Let me give you 2 minutes, I guess. I put also 2 optional stages. Yeah, so they are optional. If we don't have enough time or we don't want to focus on that, we might skip that. So sometimes we do skip that, but try to consider them as well. The 2 optional stages, that is F and I. Any guesses? We have the first answer. We have a fast finisher, Irina. I see. Okay, thank you so much. Again, these are possible, yes? There is no common framework that I would insist on. And I would say, no, it's not correct. You should do it this way. Okay, let me give you 1 more minute. Yeah, I want to see more answers. You can do the same. You can text to private to the host, or you can text to everyone. Okay, let me show you the quiz, yes, and then we will discuss. So the possible stages, yes, the order of possible stages for speaking, like as this, yeah, leading, pretext discussion, just listening, focus on useful language, practice of useful language, optional, only if it's necessary and if you have time for that, task preparation, task performance, feedback, and then task repetition. So you ask them to do the same task again. We will find out the reasons now, yeah, but this just a possible order of stages. Let me give you explanation of each stage so that you see the reasons why I decided to put the stages this way. So usually, how would we stage speaking and writing lessons? How would we plan that? So let's imagine when we open the course book, we usually have, when we teach speaking lessons, the course books usually have something like useful language, then the task, and then they usually give a task of how to check that task. Yes, or now talk to your partner and discuss what you've written. Yes, what you've written about yourself. So usually that's like that. So how to plan such lesson and to focus on developing speaking skills. Yes, so the main aim of the lesson is to help students develop their speaking skills in terms of fluency and accuracy, probably because you will give feedback on language. So for speaking and writing, we can do it this way. We can give some pre-task stages, then we do the task, that is either speaking or writing, and then we do the feedback stage. And ideally, if we have time, after the feedback, we ask students to complete the same task again. Yes, so we ask them to do the same task again better, and considering the feedback that we gave to them. Yeah, so for example, if we have given them the feedback on language, so we have already discussed what might be better done either in their speaking or in their writing, they now can consider it and repeat the same task again, yeah, and do it better. So how would we do that? So everything that is in yellow, yes, that is a pre-task, everything is focused on the input. Yeah? So input, that the language that we give to our students, that the language or something, the language, I would say the language, yes, the examples that our students need in order to be able later in our class to produce some output. So everything that is in yellow is focused on input. So what can we do here? Of course, we might include a lead-in as usual. Then probably we would need to give our students a model, an example of speaking that we would like them to imitate, yeah, that we would like them to repeat, yes, at the production stage, at the final stage. So but before giving them that model, if we talk about speaking, probably it will be a listening task, yeah. So we would give a short pre-text discussion. So we will discuss what the text will be about, what do you think they will discuss, what do you think their ideas will be about that, yes. Then we allow our students to listen to that model, for example, a conversation, a dialogue, or whatever, yeah. And then probably in that model, the participants, yes, the speakers, would use some useful language that our students could also use in their speaking. That's not the main focus of our lesson. Yes, we want our students to practice speaking, but it's just a sub-aim, yeah? So we would give them some useful language that they might need for their output, yeah? We might clarify that language briefly if we have enough time. Probably we would give them a very short control task to make sure that they understand this useful language and they memorize it a little bit, yeah? And then we will give them time to prepare for speaking. For example, if you want your students to discuss something, probably they would need first to think on their own and prepare their ideas. Or if you want them to role play a dialogue, probably you will give them time to work in pairs and to write, yes, to take notes that they will use for their dialogue or whatever. So we would probably not ask students to perform speaking on the spot, yes. If we talk about a speaking task, a complex speaking task, students will need some time to prepare, take some notes, maybe consider the useful language, and it refers to any types of learners, beginners, elementary, even advanced, yes. Then we would give them opportunity to speak, to perform the speaking task while we will be monitoring, yes. So we will plan some time here, enough time. This stage should be not that short, yes. So make sure that you plan enough time here. So you allow your students to talk, to speak, to produce, yes, to develop their speaking fluency. And then we would ask them to Like we will get some feedback on content, yes, what you've discussed, what was the most interesting point here or whatever. And of course, we would give them feedback on language. So we would discuss their mistakes, how well they coped with the task. Probably we will correct something, some most common mistakes, maybe something that is really relevant to your students, yes. So we will correct them. We will maybe draw their attention to the useful language again if they don't use it. We might remind them, guys, you did well, but you didn't use some useful phrases. Make sure that you use them. And we would give them opportunity to do the same task again. So they've received the feedback from us. They know how they can improve their speaking. Yes, they know what mistakes they need to correct and consider. We have reminded them, guys, don't forget to use useful language. And if you have enough time, but if you plan that, probably you would have enough time, yes? Give them a chance, regroup them, ask them to work with a different partner. Even if you work with only 2 students, it's okay. Just adapt the task a little bit, give a different point for discussion or whatever, and ask them to complete the same task again. Because the main aim of such lesson is speaking. So students should speak a lot and we should give them feedback on their accuracy, and fluency. I'm not sure it's possible to give that much feedback on fluency, yes, but they will develop fluency if they speak as much as possible. And we need to plan the lesson in that way that they develop this fluency. And of course, we work on the accuracy while we're giving feedback to them and give them a chance to correct themselves and do it better, more accurately. So that's basically how you can plan your speaking lesson, including the stages. Again, it's not like a set common framework, just possible stages. And writing, I would say that if we talk about writing, there are some approaches. Maybe you've heard about product writing approach or process writing approach. Have you heard about them? Product writing and process writing. Any reaction if you've heard about that? I do recommend that you read about the difference, yes, between product and process writing approaches and what is different in terms of planning these types of lessons. I'll give you an example of how you can plan a lesson according to the product writing approach. That's when we focus on the final draft, yes, that when we want our students to write a very accurate piece of writing. So we want them to teach how to write a specific type of text. So with the yellow part, yes, with the pre-task, we do actually almost the same as we do for the speaking. If we want our students to know how to write a specific type of text, probably we will need to give them a model, the same as in speaking. So we will show them an example. And we do the same. We do the lead-in, we discuss something that is related to the model, yes, to the example of this text. Then we read. Here we listen, but here we read. We focus on useful language. For example, if you write for and against essay, yes, probably you would draw their attention to some useful phrases. If you have enough time, you would ask them to practice it. Yeah, so practice stage here is again optional. You would give them maybe a control task, and then you would ask them to prepare for the task. Again, writing from scratch, it might be difficult. So you should plan some time, you should allow some time for preparing, for writing a plan, for taking notes, for collecting ideas. It might be done individually or in pairs. You might put your students into pairs and brainstorm ideas for their future text, yes, for their future piece of writing. So something that will help them to prepare, yeah, for writing their text. Then probably you would plan how to give them the time to write their first draft. Make sure that you give them enough time. Writing also requires time. It's time consuming, yes, so make sure that you plan enough time here. And then after that, you basically move to the feedback stage, the same as here. How to plan feedback stage? In the writing, it might be difficult to give feedback from the teacher because it means that you will need to read, yes, everything. While they're speaking, you can go and monitor, or you can join breakout sessions and take notes about mistakes. In writing, it might be difficult, yeah? So here you might implement either self-correction or peer correction. So you might give your students a checklist that they will use in order to check their own text or to check the text of their classmate. Yeah. So you would give them a chance to give feedback to each other. You can also join if you have enough time. You want to focus on some, I don't know, most common mistakes. So you might remind here also about the structure of the text or about the useful language, whatever. And then you would ask them to review, to to revise their text and make it better. It's the same as here. You would give them an opportunity to improve their performance, to write a better version of their text. Yeah. So if planning a speaking or a writing lesson, more or less you can follow the same stages. There should be some pre-task stage where you give your students an input. Yeah, that's very important for productive lessons. Then you would give them enough time for the task itself. Yeah, here, so make sure that you plan enough time, that like you devote enough time here. And then you should plan how you would do the feedback stage and plan enough time for this repetition, yes, for the final draft here or for the task repetition in a speaking lesson. If you plan it this way, if you allocate your time fairly, it would be a good, successful writing lesson. But again, I do recommend you read about process writing and product writing because the staging differs, yeah, for these two types of writing lessons. What to consider? Just to sum up everything. So make sure that you have a modal text. If we talk about speaking lesson, that should be a listening task, yes, an audio recording. Make sure, or if you're working with writing, make sure that you have a written model, a written example of what you expect from your students. Yeah, make sure that you plan enough preparation time. We might forget about that while planning such lesson, but make sure that you don't forget about preparation, and make sure that you have enough time for repetition of the task for the speaking lesson. And if we talk about writing, make sure that you will give your students an opportunity to write a better version of their writing. Of course, you can do it next lesson, but it would be great if you can plan it and do that at once in the same lesson by, again, like incorporating by using self-correction or peer correction, self-assessment and peer assessment. Yeah, just give your students a checklist that they can use while checking the text. Yeah, and they will do that, and they will get feedback from their peers, and they will improve their draft. So if you have any questions about planning productive skills lessons, please write in the chat. Okay. So we've discussed the staging. Yeah, so probably now you know how to plan any type of the lesson. Any reaction if that's true? True or not? Okay, I see some reactions. So at least we know how to plan these types of lessons. But of course, it's like we might have different lessons. Like we do not say that we only teach according to this 7 frameworks and that's all. Not 7, but how many we discussed? Yeah, we discussed 7. Yeah, we discussed 2, 1, 3, and there 5, even 8 frameworks, yeah, for different lessons. But anyway, they might be different lessons. For example, just a few examples for you. First class with new students. Probably your planning would differ. If you have your first class with new students or a new student, you would need to include an introduction and icebreaker stage. You just need to include that into your planning. Yes, apart from other stages. Then you would need probably to include a stage where you would be able to assess a little bit, yes, the student. And if you even have enough time, or if you have a group of students, probably you would need to include a stage where you would need, where you would do a kind of a needs analysis, yeah, where you would give them a questionnaire or a test or whatever that would help you to see their needs and their interests, yes. Again, apart from all those stages that you have for a typical lesson, for a regular lesson, you would need to include this. And probably you would need to plan some time for setting classroom rules and routines. Remember, it's very important to do that at the very first class with your students, yes, to agree on some rules and routines. So make sure that if you have a first class, you include at least 3 more stages, at least 3 more, but probably something might be different, yeah, but at least these 3. Then if you have mixed ability classes, I'm not sure, but if you're working at a school and you have like 20, 15 students, such large classes, it might be difficult. And I do understand that in such classes, students might have different levels, yes? So different levels of English. Some of them might be elementary. In one class, sometimes we might have elementary students and pre-intermediate students, or more often we have like upper intermediate and someone who is like not even intermediate level. So if you work with a mixed ability classes, your planning probably would also differ. You may take a screenshot of this slide. Yes, we would not stop here for long. So your planning should differ in the way that you would need to plan how you would give extension, something extra, to stronger students, faster students, and how you would do the same for weaker students. Yeah. So very often, maybe an example to you. We say fast finishers. Yes, very often students who are stronger, very often they are fast finishers and they finish tasks faster. Probably for them, you need to prepare extra tasks, or you need to be ready with extra 2 sentences or whatever. Again, it's not possible to do that on the spot. Yeah, it's better to prepare that in advance. So you will have to think and plan what extra challenge you would give to your stronger students, if you have such students. And at the same time, probably while planning a lesson, and if you know that you have weaker students, you would need to plan how you would support them. For example, you might plan and pre-teach, pre-teaching of more vocabulary to them. Like for all class, like you might pre-teach one set of words, but for them, probably you would give an extra worksheet with more words, or you would allow them to use dictionaries, yes? Or for example, if the whole class is doing like discussing some questions, probably for weaker students, you would need to give them, options, like answers for these questions. So you would need to plan that, yes, to balance the pace of your lesson, yes, and to keep the same pace with all the students. So again, if you have mixed ability lessons, it would require extra planning, extra preparation, I would say. Just consider that and think about that. And of course, revision lessons, we don't usually stick to one, common framework. Revision lessons, we do them in order to check students' understanding, how well they remember something that we have taught them. It's a great opportunity to remind them about something, yes, to reinforce their knowledge or fill gaps in their knowledge. So again, while planning a revision lesson, probably don't forget about the frameworks. You would need to focus on your students' needs, yes? So you would need to work on something that they struggle with, or you want, for example, to fill gaps in their knowledge. If you didn't have time like before for some topics, you might include these topics into your revision lessons. So just remember that there are some other types of lessons that we do, yes, and we can choose any stages for these lessons, yes, but make sure, again, you include variety. Different types of tasks, different types of interaction, yes? So it's possible to bring variety to any type of the lesson. And finally, yes, assessment. That's something that was on agenda for today, yes. Assessment is quite a complex topic. And remember, at our first meeting, not our first meeting, but our first webinar with you, we discussed what a lesson plan for you. Yeah, remember what a lesson plan is for you. I showed you different pictures, and we all discussed that, and we decided that a lesson plan should not be a very rigid map, a very rigid route map, but it should be a flexible, a guide with some spaces for flexibility, yes? And flexibility means that we should be responsive to our students' needs. And to decide what our students need, yes, we usually do some continuous assessment of what they know and what they don't know, yeah? And we assess them all the time. Maybe we don't even think about that, but when we monitor them and we listen to their mistakes, we listen how well they cope with the speaking task, or when we check their writing task, we always assess them, even if we do that like in an informal setting. We don't give them a test or whatever. We always do this assessment, and actually that helps us in planning. Before that, yes, before we talk about how assessment can help us in planning lesson, let's discuss what assessment is. So first of all, assessment refers to different ways of collecting information about learners' progress. It's not only about testing. Assessment, it's different, it's a more complex. Testing is just a form of assessment, yeah? It's just one form, one way to assess our students' learning. There are different terms that I will be using now, yes, while showing the next slide. If you don't mind, I would like you to check how well you remember the terms that you had on your self-study before the session. So please follow the link, 1 second, or scan the QR code. I'll send it to you, to everyone, 1 second. And follow the link or scan the QR code and try to match the terms. There are only 10 of them with the descriptions. Yeah, it's just for you. Yeah, if you're not sure about some terms, you can click on show answers, yes, and you will see the answers. These are just different types of assessment and different types of tests. Try to test how well you remember these terms. Let me give you 2 minutes for that. Let me know when you're ready. Show any reaction or text me in the chat. Actually, as a teacher, I think you don't need to know all those terms. Yeah, as a teacher, probably we as teachers need to understand, yeah, why we do that, why we assess our students, and how we can use that for teaching purposes, how we can improve our teaching and planning. Any reaction? I would wait for the first person to complete the task, and we will continue. You can do the task a lot of times. You can click on reset and try it again here, or you can check the answers if you're not sure. Okay, anyone is ready? Okay, if you want, you can do that after the session. Let's talk about assessment, yes? So when we talk about assessment, these are different terms that describe different types of tests, different types of assessments. Yes, again, the key point here is that we don't need to know all those terms. Probably if we do a test, we understand why we do that, for what purposes, yeah? But we need to remember that when we talk about assessment and the role of assessment, like in teaching in classes and ESL classes, is that we might have learning, assessment of learning, assessment for learning, and assessment as learning. And so if we talk about assessment of learning, probably we talk about some formal and summative tests like exams. Probably they are checked. Probably students receive a mark for such a test, and we give that mark to their parents if we're working with kids, or if we work with adults. Yes, they also receive some mark, so some symbol that shows their position within the group, or that shows how well they can do at this or that level. So that is assessment of learning. Actually, it does not help us that much with planning or teaching. Yes, it just measures students' overall achievement or proficiency. Again, that might be summative assessment. That's something that we do at the end of the course. It might be like including like tests or exams or whatever. If we talk about assessment for learning, that's something that we can use. Here, the central role is the teacher. So we do this assessment for learning in order to collect data, in order to collect information about the progress of our students, in order to collect their gaps in knowledge, and we can include that, we can consider that in planning. So we can do that even like during any class. We can do something like diagnostic test. Remember when we discussed with you TTT, it all starts with a diagnostic test. So we assess our students. It's not a formal exam, it's not a formal test. We just give them a task and we assess how much they know about this or that topic. And it helps us to decide what to do next in our teaching. We can do it all the time. We can assess our students. We can like give them feedback, or we cannot give them feedback. We just can save that for ourselves. We don't need to give our students any marks or whatever. We just need to collect some information about their weaknesses and strengths in order to adjust our plans, our future, yes, plans, in order to plan the following lessons better and to better consider their needs. So if we sum up, this type of assessment help to plan and modify teaching and learning programs to achieve more. So if we, like, let's imagine, yes, if we don't do that, we would not adjust materials to students' needs, yes. So if we don't do that, we would not know what weaknesses our students have, what topics they need to revise. And if we don't do that, we do not like consider their needs, their needs, probably our teaching and their learning would not be that successful, yes? So we should do that all the time. Again, every lesson we should assess and think how we can change something in our lesson plans, what else we can include into our lesson planning, into like to be able to better achieve the aims, yes, of their course or whatever. And of course, we might have assessment as learning, where the central role is the student. So remember, I think it's quite a popular term nowadays, lifelong learning. So we need to teach our students how to learn on their own, yes, how to study on their own. So we might ask them to assess something on their own. For example, we talked about self-assessment and peer assessment. So we might use some assessment like that in order to show our students how to see their strengths and the weaknesses in their own learning, and how to work with that and like include that into their learning in the future. Yeah, so we might teach them how to use the checklist, how to check whether they've achieved the task. We may teach them how to spot their weaknesses, yes, and how to work on those weaknesses. So that is something that is actually very important for our learners. But the point here that I wanted to to show you is that we need to assess for learning. Remember, assessment is not only about tests, not only about given marks, yes, but it's something that we can use for our lesson planning, and planning even like not one lesson, but further lessons. Okay, and I guess that is all. And I would really love to sum up everything. Yes, if you don't mind, yeah, I would share the link in the chat. 1 second. In the chat, let's assess your own learning. Yeah. First of all, it would be great to receive your impressions, yes, after the course, because we've discussed everything at this course. Yes, we are done with all the topics. So it would be nice for us to see what you would like to work on in order to be able to consider that for our future courses. And it would be great for yourself, yes? Like something as assessment as learning, yes? Try to assess your own weaknesses, your own strengths, yeah, and try to answer the questions I'm good at in terms of lesson planning, I can improve on, and I should for my future, for my further professional development. So try to complete these 3 sentences for yourself. You can click on plus here and add your answer, or feel free to text in the chat. I will leave this Padlet here, so you'll be able to come back to it at any time, yes, and assess your own learning, your own professional development. And again, it would be a great chance for us to receive some feedback from you and to consider your needs for planning our future courses. Okay, and congratulations. We are done. Yeah, we've done everything. We've discussed everything. Thank you so much for your participation. So we can put a tick here for our final session. So congratulations. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask those questions in the chat box. Yes, while we are here. Okay, thank you so much. It was real. Thank you so much for your participation. And luck.
Yeah.
I wish you luck in your further professional development. Thank you.
So thank you, Alina, so much. So I hope you can hear me well. Can you? Yeah, good. So thank you, Alina, so much. And congratulations to all the participants. You have completed the course lesson planning, right? And actually, you're on the final stage. So congratulations on that. And yeah, all those participants who have joined today. So thank you so much that you're joining live. And as Alina has mentioned, for webinars have passed, but if you have skipped some webinars, you can watch the recordings, which are in your material section. And if you talk about the materials, so access to the materials will be till the 26th of August. So you will be able to look through the materials, to read all the information. So do not worry, you will be able to do that. And actually, those materials will help you to complete the test to get the certificate, right? And yeah, actually, it is already in your material section, the test, I mean, and it is already available. But if you don't feel very confident completing the test, yes, you can do it till the 26th of August as well. Yeah, so if you need to look through the material section and if you want to rehearse or refresh some information, you can do it, yeah, when you have some calm time, if you can say so. And yeah, and then complete the test. And if you talk about the test, it is like the test consists of the questions with like multiple choice questions, and you will be able to have like 3 tries, yeah, to complete the test. If you have some power cuts or whatever, any other problems, so you have 3 tries. To get the certificate, you need to get 80% of correct answers, right? And actually, I'm pretty sure that for using 3 tries, you will be able to get 80% of correct answers. And you will be able to see if you get 80% of correct answers, you will see the form, which we will ask you to fill in. Yeah, you need to fill in the form to get the certificate. Yeah, so 3 steps, I would say. Look through the materials, watch the videos, right? Then complete the test and fill in the form. And then you will be able to get the certificate. And also, I would like to tell you a little about the next hour course. Yes, we are going to have and launch the next course, the 3rd of July, empowering ESL learners. So if you're interested, you can register for the course. It is a free course of webinars, which you can actually attend. Yeah, so all the webinars will be live on YouTube. You will be able to attend them free, to watch them free. And if you want, you will be able to get the certificate by paying for them. So I will send the link in your actually in your in the chat, so you will be able to see that. And yes, so you can look through the information. And thank you one more time for all of the participants that you have joined, that you have chosen TalkEn.Cloud. We will send you the feedback form, so please fill it in. We need your when you I can see some questions. So the question is, can you please remind when the test is due? The test is available, it has been available for 4 minutes already in your materials section, and you can complete it till the 26th of August. So you have 2 months, 2 months of access to the materials and 2 months of the access to the test. You're welcome. Okay, so thank you for everyone, but I want you to stay here because we have, as we have mentioned before, we are going to have with you the meeting with the head of TalkEn.Cloud platform, with Katya Kravchenko, and she will be able to tell you the information about the platform, all the information about the platform which you will need, if you want to choose if you want to choose to work with our TalkEn.Cloud platform. So just a second. Okay, Katya is here. So Katya, hello and welcome. You're welcome. So your time.
Дякую, Інна, за презентацію. Я перейду на свою частину вже на українську мову. Рада бачити всіх учасників сьогодні. Вітаю вас із завершенням курсу. Вітаю з тим, що ви отримали дуже багато нових знань. Впевнена, що наші тренери вас надихнули, багато розповіли цікавого, і впевнена, що ви це все будете використовувати в подальшому у вашій роботі. Зі свого боку, я хочу коротко вам презентувати нашу платформу TalkEn.Cloud, тому що вона може мати для вас дуже багато корисних інструментів, які ви можете теж використовувати у вашій роботі. Тому я не буду довго затягувати час і перейду, власне, до презентації платформи. Тому зараз буду на екрані трішки демонструвати для вас і все вже розповідати. Так, отож, зараз ми з вами бачимо на екрані особистий кабінет студента на платформі TalkEn.Cloud. Я знаю, що ви вже всі знайомі з цим візуалом, тому що насправді у кожного учасника курсу був такий особистий кабінет протягом курсу. Але якщо ви плануєте або будете розглядати можливість користуватися платформою TalkEn.Cloud, тоді, власне, ви зможете і для ваших студентів, учнів, створювати такі особисті кабінети, використовувати навчальні матеріали в інтерактивному форматі, в форматі онлайн, і, власне, користуватися нашою LMS-системою, тобто Learning Management System, для того, щоб організовувати ваших учнів індивідуальних або групових. Отож, що можуть ваші учні мати в своєму особистому кабінеті? Перш за все, це розклад занять. Можливість приєднатися до вас в Zoom. Тобто, якщо ви працюєте в онлайн-форматі, відповідно, вам не потрібно мати 100-500 месенджерів, а, власне, у вас особистий кабінет на TalkEn.Cloud, власне, для ваших студентів буде слугувати таким навчальним простором, де повністю вже є все зібране. А далі до кожного домашнього завдання вчитель може задавати, до кожного уроку вчитель може задавати домашні завдання, як тут у нас показано на прикладі, з посиланням на конкретну сторінку в підручнику. Вчитель може додати кожному студенту індивідуальний фідбек на те, як працював студент протягом заняття. Також є розділ з My Achievements, де студенти можуть побачити вже таку зібрану картину зі всіма оцінками протягом курсу, зі всіма своїми відвідуваними, енками, мінусиками, плюсиками і всіма зібраними, власне, фідбеками. І, звісно, найважливіше, що студенти будуть бачити у своєму особистому кабінеті, це інтерактивний підручник. Ось він у нас знаходиться в правому верхньому куточку екрану. І, власне, перейдемо, як він виглядає. В студентів, власне, є інтерактивні завдання, весь інтерактивний матеріал розподілений по юнітах. Далі йдуть уроки, блоки, і вже всередині в кожному уроці є дві частинки – presentation та practice та production. Presentation – це ознайомлення з, власне, матеріалом. У нас тут є і візуал, так, picture dictionary, відео для того, щоб ознайомитися в контексті з лексикою, і словничок з озвучкою. Це, насправді, єдине місце, де у нас є переклад український. І далі вже йдуть інтерактивні завдання на відпрацювання, власне, цього матеріалу. У мене тут вже завдання було виконано, тому всі відповіді вже були перевірені. На платформі ви знайдете більше 25 типів завдань саме. Наприклад, ось у нас є обрати правильну відповідь. Я навмання поклікаю, для того, щоб показати, як це все працює. В кінці учень натискає кнопку «Check» для того, щоб отримати, власне, миттєвий фідбек, тобто перевірку, і вже система, власне, виправляє. Є завдання дуже багатьох типів з'єднати, як ми зараз бачимо, слова в фрази або фрази в речення, unscramble слова або речення, посортувати, ось на multiple choice, далі вставити fill in the gaps і так далі. Звісно, я не зможу показати всі типи завдань протягом короткого періоду часу, але у вас завжди є демо-версії, демо-періоди, коли ви можете з цим самознайомитися, якщо вам це цікаво. Далі я хотіла б коротко розповісти, що всі наші підручники для шкільних вікових категорій, вони побудовані за моделлю перевернутий урок. Тому, власне, ми бачимо два розділи уроку. Це presentation, тобто підготовка, і до уроку з ознайомленням саме лексики або граматики уроку. І practice та production – це, власне, частинка матеріалу, яка проходиться вже на уроці з вчителем, з групою або з вчителем індивідуально. Я не буду дуже заглиблюватися в що таке перевернутий урок. Я впевнена, що всі українські освітяни знають, що це таке, який його принцип. До частинки practice та production, тобто матеріал, який вчитель з учнем проходить протягом заняття, у нас є також деталізований план занять для вчителів. Тому для вчителів ця платформа насправді дуже суттєво полегшує життя, тому що вам потрібно не готувати все from scratch, але, власне, ознайомитися з тим, що було для вас підготовлено. І на цьому етапі я пропоную таке перейти в особистий кабінет вчителя, щоб побачити, як це все працює з боку вчителя. Отож, зараз ми знаходимося в особистому кабінеті вчителя на платформі TalkEn.Cloud, і на що вам потрібно тут звернути увагу. Перш за все, це розділ Demo Course Books. Після того, як ви зареєструєтесь на платформі, у вас, в принципі, буде 14 днів безкоштовного доступу, коли ви зможете і згенерувати профілі учнів, і користуватись навчальними матеріалами абсолютно безкоштовно. Але Demo Course Books – це розділ, який завжди у вас залишається в доступі, і в цьому розділі ви можете ознайомитися, власне, з бібліотекою всіх інтерактивних підручників, які знаходяться на нашій платформі. Ці підручники у нас розподілені на 4 вікових категорії – молодша, середня, старша школа і дорослі. Власне, всі підручники побудовані за векторним принципом Age plus level, тобто з врахуванням, підбір підручника йде з врахуванням і віку студента, вікової категорії, і також рівня англійської, який потрібен вашому студенту-учню. Тому рівень, наприклад, Pre-A11, він буде абсолютно різним для всіх вікових категорій, наповнення буде абсолютно різне. Підемо глибше. Тепер в кожному рівні в шкільних вікових категоріях у нас є 2 типи підручників. Це комплексний курс і розмовний. Очевидно з назви, що комплексний курс у нас покриває абсолютно всі навички володіння мовою. Курс speaking, тобто розмовний, покриває саме, робить акцент на переведення лексичного запасу з пасивного в активний і розвиток навички listening та speaking. Відповідно, в кожному підручнику у нас є дві складових. Це Students Book, який ми бачили з вами в особистому кабінеті учня, і також Teacher's Guide, на який я зараз, власне, і пропоную звернути увагу. Власне, тут у нас знаходяться деталізовані плани занять для вчителя. Так як у мене тут зараз відкритий демо-курсбук, то в мене в доступі є буквально кілька уроків, але очевидно, якщо він вже в повному обсязі, він вже відповідно відкривається всі юніти. Що у нас є в Teacher's Guide? Тут у нас є насправді дуже детально прописано, як вчитель працює з кожним завданням протягом всіх стейджів уроку. Можуть тут бути навіть такі завдання, які не враховані в Students Book, так, тому що це завдання на speaking, або на якусь активність в парах розмовну також, або на якусь гру. Відповідно, в Students Book в учнів цього не буде, але тут є все прописано у вчителя. Також, як ви бачите, у нас в деяких завданнях є посилання на slide number 2, number 4 і так далі. Тому в Extra Materials в кінці кожного року у нас є, ви зможете знайти повністю готову презентацію PPT для проведення кожного заняття. Далі, якщо ми з вами підемо дивитися ще на різні типи вправ, ми побачимо, що в нас тут є прописано навіть як надавати фідбек учням, як ставити уточнюючі запитання по розумінню інструкції, ICQs, в якому форматі виконується кожна активність, так, груп, міні-групи, пари, індивідуально чи open клас і так далі. І навіть, якщо мені зараз вдасться знайти таку активність, може бути таке, зараз я якраз він повідкриваю. Якщо в завданні у вас є рекомендація використати Kahoot, або Quizlet, або Bamboozle, або інший якийсь зовнішній інтерактивний гейміфікований ресурс, тоді тут вже повністю є готове квіз на Kahoot або Quizlet, тобто вчителю не потрібно власне створювати все з нуля самостійно, так, але тут вже є все готове, розроблено під конкретну лексику або граматику уроку, тому для вчителів це дуже суттєва економія. Я не буду дуже детально далі продовжувати аналізувати власне план уроку, але єдине, що хочу сказати на завершення, що всі плани уроків, всі розробки наших підручників, вони були створені власне під керівництвом команди авторів, завжди працювали під керівництвом наших методистів, власне, які і надають інформацію, власне, працюють тренерами в нашій академії і, власне, розповідають вам і навчають різних цікавих актуальних методик. Я думаю, що з важливої інформації я вам все розповіла. Насправді, якщо вас цікавить онлайн-платформа TalkEn.Cloud і користування нею, ви можете звернутися до наших менеджерів платформи. Вони зможуть вже пояснити набагато більше, розповісти детальніше про це. Зі свого боку, я зараз... Інна мене випередила, дякую, Інна. В чат надішлю лінк на наш веб-сайт. Ви зможете сконтактувати з нашими менеджерами, якщо у вас є потреба в цьому, для того, щоб дізнатися більш детальну інформацію. Ще раз, я вас вітаю із закінченням курсу. Вітаю, що ви дуже рада, що в нас є такі учасники, які активно навчаються, інвестують у власний розвиток, у власне зростання і в подальшому це все передають вашим учням, вашим дітям. Дякую велике, Інна, дякую велике за те, що ви організували такий неймовірний курс. Всім гарного вечора і до зустрічі.
І я ще на кінець нагадаю, що запис вебінару буде доданий в ваші навчальні матеріали. Мені англійською легше, so will be added in 24 hours. Yeah. So thank you everyone for joining, and thank you Kate for joining as well. Yeah. So I do hope to see you during our next courses, because I can see the same names from the course to course. So it's really a pleasure to see that. So thank you everyone, and I do hope that you enjoy the course and enjoy your evening. So thank you for joining, and goodbye. See you in the next courses.